edition. We've got Dinesh Nambiar, who is the chairman of the Malaysian and Australian Business Council, as well as other things, and I'll let him get into that later. We've got David Wong, who's also an EXCO of the Malaysia Australia Business Council, and we've got Barath Ashok, who is one of the Ex-Officio board members of the Malaysia Australia Business Council. Today we're going to be talking about a special program that the Malaysia Australia Business Council, or MABC as we call it for short, has put together for those impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic economically. So before we get started, I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to introduce yourselves. And if we could start with you, Dinesh, if you could let us know a little bit more about yourself and let the viewers know a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Nordin, and good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here to talk about MABC. I have been chairman of MABC for the last 3 years, and our chairmanships are 2-year terms with a maximum of 2 terms. So I'm on the last leg of my second term. In my business life, I'm chairman of Lend-Lease Malaysia, and Lend-Lease Malaysia is a company that's been in Malaysia for about 40 years. Commenced in the field of project management and construction, mainly doing fee-based work, and then we have then moved on into property development. We also manage malls. We do a number of other things like investment management. So we are a full spectrum property developer today in Malaysia, and our flagship development at the moment is the lifestyle quarter at the Tun Razak Exchange. And Lend-Lease is a company listed in the Australian Stock Exchange, and has offices all over the world. Thank you, Nordin.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you. I thought you were not going to mention your flagship project there for a second. I was going to get worried. It's a big one. So over to you now, David. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in the business world in Malaysia.
Yeah, thank you, Nordin, for having me. I am attached to MABC as an EXCO for the last 4 years. I was also the past chairman of PCOM, the Tech Association of Malaysia, and currently the chair for Asia Pacific, a federation called Ex-Officio, which represents 24 economies in the Asia Pacific for tech industry as well. I'm also the one of the founder of Outsourcing Malaysia, which is promoting and driving the GBS, the Global Business Services industry, very well in the country. On the private side, the job that pays me, that's S&T Global Logistics, a company that I founded, also with another 2 or 3 other companies. This group of companies are all focused on logistics and e-commerce and also tech. So this combination so far works quite well, especially in the pandemic situation. And I hope we will be able to contribute as much as we can to the community, and as well as to the business, as well as to individuals in all the things that we do. Yeah. So that's me, and glad to be here.
Great to have you here, David. And now, Barath, we were talking about your haircut earlier, and the fact that we're at home. But tell us what your business journey is, and how did you come to be part of the Malaysia Australia Business Council?
Sure. Thanks, Nordin. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Barath. I'm the country manager for Linfox Logistics. I've been associated with MABC for last year and a half, and it's been a great experience. The quality of work which is happening in MABC, is quite interesting, and really helps us to see the other side of what we do. In terms of my work life, so as I said, I work for Linfox Logistics. I've been with them for over 14 years now. So Linfox is a logistics company started in Australia and right now present in Asia Pacific. And slightly touching upon today's topic on COVID, being in the logistics business and being operational fully during the COVID times, doing the essential services. You kind of see what happens in the front line. How frontliners are really working hard, and and also to some extent the impact of COVID. So the program which MABC has put forward in terms of MABC Cares is a fantastic program. I'm sure we're going to talk about it more. So again, one more feather to MABC cap, and really excited to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Barath. Now, Dinesh, when we first envisaged, I'm also a part of the MABC, for those of you who don't know. I'm also one of the EXCO. And for one of the things that we've seen MABC time and time again, whenever something happens, whether it's the floods in Penang or other issues that we had, the bushfires in Australia, MABC always picks up and does something for the community. What was your vision in terms of putting together MABC Cares, and why is it important at this point in time?
It's a good question, Nordin, because we, in the early stages of the pandemic, and as you rightly said, we've done these programs before, such as for the bushfires, the floods in Penang, and so on. We didn't originally commence a program because most of us work in businesses and many businesses and individuals were stepping up in the early days as part of their own, desire to help the communities. So everyone was, I think, and most of our members were pretty extensively involved in supporting the community. But this has gone on for a long time now. We're now 18 months into the pandemic, and people are especially in this lockdown. I think it has been very difficult because people have been in lockdown for a very long time, deprived of incomes, and we've now become very much more aware of the sufferings of people deprived of, as I said, deprived of income. So we began to think of, ways in which we could put a program together and reach out to our membership. We are, of course, very mindful that many of our members themselves are in difficulties. Many businesses are struggling, and many individuals who are members are struggling. So we said, well, we won't get too ambitious. Let's try and I think when we had the conversation in a small group of us, 4 of us at first to talk about it, we talked about trying to raise about 15,000 ringgit as a kickoff and see where it gets us to. So we kicked this off a couple of weeks ago, as you know, 3 weeks ago nearly, and we are going to actually commence our first donation in the next couple of days with that 15,000. But I'm very pleased to say, Nordin, on today, and you may all be aware of it, but we've actually raised 40,000 ringgit so far, which is admirable. Thank you to all our members. In many cases, thank you to the staff of many of our corporate members who have also chipped in and continue to chip in. So I'm very pleased that we're going to be able to do our bit and a bit more for the community.
Mm-hmm. No, it's been a wonderful response, and I think this is where that idea of picking up where there's a gap and moving to get to where we want to be as a society through the corporate sector. Now, David, there's a couple of questions that already have come in around how can smaller companies be involved with CSR, and what should they do during this time? What are your ideas there, David?
Yeah, everyone can play a part in this current situation, whether it's small or big, right? Or even as an individual. You see, the issue out there is not small, right? Especially, as you know, many has lost jobs, especially foreigners, for example. When the F&B or factories are closed, the first to go are the foreigners. I mean, I used to hire almost 200 to 300 foreigners. Now I'm down to 20. You know, so these people are out there without jobs, and it's hand to mouth. If there's any food even left out there, so they are really in need. There are also, of course, the B40s and also the welfare homes and many others where they, during the good time or the pre-pandemic, they have been able to receive goods and food and in kind and cash. But today, the companies are themselves not doing as well. So the supply has been very, very limited, right? So there are actually channels to be able to reach them, right? So whether you are small, whether you are a startup or whether you're a company, we can actually work closely with some of these channels. Like for example, in MABC Care, we are working with channels like the COVID Care Mind. We also have another organization called the Persatuan Kebajikan Transformasi Selangor and Kuala Lumpur, right? They have the reach to all these families and individuals that are really in need, right? So what we can do is to be able to work closely, right, as a startups or as whatever association, with these channels to reach out to these people. And what can you contribute as a startup or even as a small enterprise? Well, it can be, like for example, in S&T case, we are in logistics. So I offer actually free space, right? And free logistics transport to help with the movement of some of these goods. Because most of the helpers are basically volunteers. And imagine even storage of food products itself is a challenge, right? Because their kitchens and their storeroom will be all filled up. So movements of those food, you know, and also how do you preserve those food in a good, proper condition is also something that is important to look at. So if you have, so for our case, because we are in this trade, so we offer a free space for goods to be stored, right? So we centralize all the food, and then we are able to transport it easier, right? So that's one way that we can. That's because the business that I'm in, I can do that. But depending on the business that you are in, whether you are in the digital business or whether you are in the F&B business or whether you are in logistics, in one way or another, there will be some way, right? Whether in kind or in cash, that we can contribute. And that's what MABC Care is for, right? It's a platform for you to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Lovely, lovely. So what you're saying is we've got the platform, we've got the strategic support behind us, and we've got the partners on the ground who are going to deliver the food to those people who need it. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So Barath, there's been a couple of questions around motivation, around why should corporations do this, and is it going to negatively impact their bottom line, or is it going to have a positive impact in the long term? What are your thoughts there, and what is Linfox's thoughts in terms of this kind of approach to CSR?
Right. I mean, it is extremely important that everyone not just think about the environment which we work in and a much larger society, and I think COVID period is probably the best example where it clearly shows how you can be impacted both positively and negatively by the situations around you. Yeah? So therefore, taking care of the society which you live in and whatever way you can contribute is extremely crucial. Now, touching upon how in terms of profitability and how it impacts as an organization. I mean that See, even from a financial point of view, what you are looking at is a very small part of, what will be the revenue or bottom line, what you achieve. Therefore, that is not a consideration for at least a company like Linfox, and many of the other companies which I have seen don't see that as part of, financial burden. On the other side, all the companies, even there are obviously public limited companies who are bound by the laws in terms of having a strong CSR program and have a commitment towards that. But even otherwise, all the private companies where they're not bound by laws also have started putting CSR budgets. And they also, what has also started happening is a lot of the marketing budgets have started getting channeled to CSR marketing. So rather than which helps them on both the ways. One is they are helping the society, as well as you are having your own marketing, because only if your business sustains you can continue supporting the society. So therefore, I think the angle in which we look is important. Just it should not be just looked at purely from a money point of view. And it should be looked at in a much more larger platform. And even if from a money point of view, there are avenues where that get negated. So that's one. Second is, I would also like to touch upon what David was mentioning. Everything is not about just cash, and a lot of things we can do through the core service which we provide. And like David was talking about logistics, and that's exactly what we do as well. Wherever we can support from a physical movement point of view, we do. And the similar way, all the companies, I'm sure that there are indirect ways or through their core business, we can support the society. So so that takes away the whole monetary component.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you, Barath. Now, Dinesh, one of the things that we talked about, and David mentioned it also, is there's a lot of people who have lost their jobs. There's a lot of people companies who have been impacted, and of course, this is comes to the crux of the matter. We need the economy to start moving. Now, MABC is not just we're not just here doing charity. We're actually a very active chamber of commerce and business council who engages directly with a lot of the stakeholders. One of those stakeholders is the Malaysian government. What has MABC been doing to help businesses during this time in terms of engaging with the government directly?
Yeah. So as you rightly said, Nordin, the whole core business, if you like, of the MABC is to be the representative or the chamber through which businesses here that do businesses between Australia and Malaysia, who are operating either Australian businesses here or Malaysian businesses who are operating here and doing business with Australia, can receive information, can network among members, and can use MABC as a basis to promote their businesses too. So this pandemic has, of course, been a major problem for many of our members, as has been for the whole business community. For us, all our activities, which used to happen in person, which were events that we organized once or twice a month, and all had to slow down. So we tried to turn these into virtual events and use our online platforms more actively. So in terms of government communications and liaisons, we have maintained a continuous link between our members and the relevant government agencies, both in sending information through from our members and in communicating and distributing the information that we receive from government. So there have been, any number of announcements. There have been many conference calls, webinars that we have participated in. So just to bring just to mention one particular one, just about 2 weeks ago, we wrote um, to the Ministry of Trade on behalf of members with regard to the reopening of the sectors in the business to the business community, and we put forward a number of ideas and suggestions from our members that in opening up sectors, they need to be conscious about opening up the supply chains as well, because it's if you can open up the business, but if you haven't got the supply chains, for example, we're in property development and construction. You open up construction, but you cannot get materials, then you can't function. Productivity is severely impacted. So that's one thing. We also wanted very clear communications for our members on the protocols for opening up and the responsibilities as employers, what they have to do, so that there's no confusion in interpreting what is required of businesses when they open. So we made half a dozen suggestions to MITI, and like that, we have been in communications with with the ministry. We've also been working with other chambers so that and sharing information, and where possible, communicating on common platforms. So that's all the work. It's actually been a very active time for the chamber and for our secretariat, because it's a challenging environment. So everything cannot happen face to face, and there's of course been a lot of confusion about through the communication channels, and it's been necessary to go back and forth to get clarity and make sure that members understand the protocols and what's happening with the government through all these measures. Yes.
No, I think. Thank you, Dinesh. And I think I know the team in the office in MABC has been working very hard, and the fact that there's sometimes daily need to translate things or daily need to get things to our members. I think it's something MABC as an organization has definitely been very busy. Now, we've got two logistics men here. I'm going to take this opportunity to dig into this logistics, as you also mentioned supply chain, Dinesh, and opening up business. Now, Barath, you mentioned the word cold chain, and for me, one of the things that I saw and my concern is food supply. How good is the cold chain in Malaysia at the moment in terms of dealing with a crisis?
It is okay. So the cold chain in Malaysia has been evolving. So definitely. So I came to Malaysia 8 years back, and frankly, the cold chain infrastructure was quite limited. There has been a huge, demand-based expansion in the cold chain, which is happening over the last 2 to 3 years' time. But still, there are significant concerns. And there are two concerns. So one is around capacity and the availability of space, both be it physical infrastructure like warehouses or moving infrastructure like transport. That's one. Second is the whole compliance element of it, and which becomes extremely crucial, during the COVID times when we're talking about vaccine distributions, etc. Now, and technology does play a very big role here. And in a place like Malaysia, obviously again, compared to countries like Australia or UK, etc., the regulatory framework is not as stringent. So therefore, that allows, or probably that is what is restricting everyone to get into technology to drive the compliance. Yeah. So definitely there is a requirement, one help from a regulatory point of view, so that the compliance of cold chain goes up. And second is even organization like ours, we seriously need to look at our supply chain, which we are, and look at how technology can enable us to increase the compliance. And when I'm talking about compliance, from the perspective of maintaining the temperatures, maintaining the right temperatures through the entire chain, which becomes extremely important to maintain the quality of food and pharmaceutical items. There has been a huge progress, the huge leap which has happened over the last, let's say, 24 months. But still, there are huge opportunities out there.
Excellent. Thank you, Barath. And moving on with what you've said there, you mentioned compliance, you mentioned technology. David, what have you seen with your business? What have you seen with the broader industry? We've seen a massive shift to online business and a lot more pressure on logistics companies to deliver, online shopping. In my mind, is online shopping. Is that the reality, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, that's certainly a reality. To touch on, for example, what's happening in the perishable and the food industry, which requires a cold chain logistics. On the B2B part, the logistics company that dealt with that is also suffering a slowdown, right? Because the restaurants and supermarkets and a lot of these are closed. But the requirement for direct to consumer, whether it's farm to consumer or from the port, from the sea to consumer, that has been on the rise. But the problem is there has been lack of players. That's why you see an emergence of new players to be able to provide cold chain services for B2C, right, to cover the last mile. So that's up and coming, right? And it's not there yet. So far, what you see is the pink and the green, these delivery people, and they're all very localized. They operate only in certain cities. But over time, you'll see a stronger capability in delivery direct to consumers, whether cold or not cold, ambient or non-ambient, right? So I see that happening. Now, back to your questions on the logistics side. Now, I mentioned earlier on, I used to hire like 200 foreigners, right? But now it's down to like 20. So many, we have attempted to replace or to eliminate some of these jobs through automation, right? And I think that's the only way out. You know why? Because it's also very difficult to replace the foreigners with local, because the locals, frankly, I mean, this is our experience, chose not to take up some of these jobs. So we have actually difficulty hiring locals to become a warehouse assistant or to work in the factory environment. So that become a very big challenge for our industry. And with the e-commerce boom, every time there's a campaign, like for example, the recent 6677 or even the 88 campaign, the August 8 campaign by Shopee and Lazada, the volume will spike at least 4 to 5 times, right? And imagine we can only work at 60% capacity, right? So the productivity has to be multiple fold. So how do we do that? The only way really is to innovate some of the processes and also to automate whatever we can, even down to the extent of the travel time, even to do a picking, for example, of goods from a location. We measure what is the distance that one would travel, right? Mm-hmm. And how can we cut short that distance by implementing, let's say, conveyors or slides, or So those type of improvements helps. So that's why, fortunately for the tech industry, we are experiencing a growth, and the tech industry, like Picom, most of our members are still hiring, right? E-commerce, of course, right? That area has been enjoying a high growth as well, especially during this EMCO, this lockdown, because this particular lockdown, a lot of the shops are closed. And the only way is really to order online and get it delivered right to your home, and people are getting used to it. So I hope I answered the question, that
no, I think
there's challenges, there's opportunities, so we just need to balance and how to deal with it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think this is the thing that I wanted to highlight. There's a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot of opportunities. Now, Dinesh, coming back to our MABC Cares program, a lot of people are asking, what more questions around this, and what will make it effective? What will make it effective way to deal with the community? Why have we chosen to deliver food aid directly to them? And could you give us a bit more information on that program and how it's going to directly impact those impacted by COVID-19?
Yes, sure. So, we made an early decision that we wanted to give in kind rather than cash. And that was really driven by the fact that we wanted to make sure that it went to the right parts of the community, and it reached the right parts of the community, and what they got was what we intended to be, and that is to assist them with food and consumables, critical consumables at this point in time. So what we are doing in our case is that we are providing them, each family, with a food basket which has a value of about 150 ringgit, and we're trying to reach as many families as we can, families and individuals who are in need of that. So that's what's driven us. Now there are many ways, and just looking at addressing your question, there are many ways, of course, of doing this type of CSR work. So, and many of our members, businesses, already do CSR as a matter of course. So, and that CSR can be in many different ways. It could be in cash, it could be in kind. It could even be by going and offering support. I mean, we are talking about this during this particular period of the pandemic, but the role of companies, or to support the communities that we operate in, is something that many businesses, I think David touched on that too, and Barath, many businesses do as a part of their annual program as good corporate citizens. So just mentioning the company I'm with, Lend-Lease, we have an organization called Lend-Lease Foundation, and foundation does CSR work to the community, whether it's to homes, orphanages, old people's homes, or even any form of charities on an ongoing basis, single mothers, etc. So that kind of program continues, and many companies do that just as part of their contribution to the community. And much of that is actually done actively. Employees actually participate in going and providing some services and support. We in MABC don't do that part of it, Nordin, because our members are doing their own CSR work. So hence we pick specific events as an organization, because we're not a profit-led or profit-making company. We are representing businesses, and our core sort of capability and purpose is to provide our members with a platform to network, to get information about operating their businesses in the country, to provide them with communication channels both in Malaysia and also in Australia through the High Commission and so on. So, I just want to make the point that from an MABC perspective, we look at this on a case-by-case basis. But many of our members are doing work all through, as part of their annual plans, and probably some of them have stepped it up during this time.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Now we've noticed. Sorry, David, you wanted to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there are many different ways, of course, of assisting the different communities. It's only currently is a bit sad to note that food is the most wanted items right now, because they need to feed themselves and keep alive, right? It used to be clothing and mattresses and other items, but but we are right down to the very, very basic right now. So this is the sad state that we are in right now. A lot of these communities. But there's nothing wrong also in using cash and also different methods to contribute. For example, we contribute to support one welfare home to pay their rent. Right? You can't pay the rent with food, right? Because without renter, 45 children have to vacate that house. Where are they going to live? So we have to pay their rent, right? Otherwise, the landlord also has no income and he cannot survive as well. So that in that kind of environment, you need cash contribution. But in our case, I think MABC, we are very focused on the food because this is the most, at this moment, the most critical requirement by a lot of the communities. Yeah. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a very important area there. I mean, food, of course, is the basic thing, but also shelter is a key component. If you don't get the rent, if you don't have somewhere to live, you know, where are we going to send the food? You know, and I think this is something that we've seen time and time again, that the problems tend to multiply. And I think this is the role where CSR and the corporate sector needs to kind of fill this gap as quickly as possible. You know, while others can't help themselves. Now,
sorry,
Dinesh,
Nordin, if I may just add to that, what
sure, go ahead.
as well. I think it's a terrible time. It's you know, for so many people. But I think what has been quite amazing in Malaysia, you know, after all, you know, we're a country in which we don't have the safety nets that many countries have. You know, with the welfare system that will support those who are out of work. The government has done a number of initiatives, but you don't have a stable, continuous, you know, welfare system. But I think what's been wonderful in Malaysia is the way the communities have come out to support, you know, support these deprived communities. The way those that are able, and there are many heartwarming stories out there of people who do enormous amount of work to help those in need, and I think that's been great to see. I've seen so many of them right through this period. Many of us have supported many of them and gone and seen some of the work they do. People are actually out there doing terrific things. So I think that's something that we should be very mindful of.
I think so, Dinesh. And one of the things, sorry, I missed a bit. No, a bit of lag. No, but one of the things I've seen is women in the community have also been impacted quite heavily. And I know MABC has a special program just for women in the corporate sector. Dinesh, although you look like you're frozen to me. Okay, you're back with us. Yeah, I know you're good now. Dinesh, while we have you here, could you tell us about the Malaysia Australia Business Council program for women and what we're doing there in terms of diversity and opportunities for women in the workplace?
Yes, sure. We've always had a women in business subcommittee who there to support women in business. Our members who may be women who are either owning their own businesses, in a career, and looking to join an organization where they can meet others in similar positions and share experiences and so on. We've always had that. So our Women in Business subcommittee initiated this program. We're now into our third year. It's a mentoring program for women in business. We've had between 12 and 18 mentees. We identify them, or the subcommittee identifies them, and we have about a similar number of mentors. The mentors are both members of MABC and also in some cases non-members who are volunteering their time to help to help this program. And the purpose of this program is to help women who are looking to have a sounding board, if you like, in their decisions, about where they go with their careers or their businesses. And it's been a very successful program. We're very proud of what it's done to support, because we have, as you know, we have a very, very large potential workforce who are not able to work for a number of reasons. And also there are many women who come into business, do very well, but then have to go back to looking after families and so on, have to make those kinds of decisions. So we try to, this program tries to help on many different fronts, whether it is someone who's in the midst of a career and thinking about, the big steps they're going to take, or someone who runs a small business perhaps, or a medium-sized business, and wanting to get some advice, some support in what they should do with their businesses next. It's focused obviously entirely on women, because we'd like to see more women in business. And so it's a program we're very proud of.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dinesh. And of course, we're very lucky to have our wives who take care of us and take care of our children. And sometimes our kids pick up our wives' phones. And I'll be dealing with you later, young man. You can see in the comments here. As we close off this session, I just want to get your final thoughts, Barath, David, and Dinesh, on what are the root causes of this problem? Why do we need to get together and do this? And is there something that we can start to? Right now, I feel we are dealing with the symptoms of a lot of things, but how can we start to deal with that root cause? And Barath, you've been getting away with being quiet for at least 5 minutes now. So in closing, over to you, Barath. What is your take on how we deal with the root cause?
I think, one of the biggest elements of going through a CSR program is transparency, right? And putting aside my corporate hat and just thinking from individual perspective, that has always been a concern. Whatever I want to provide back to the society, be it kind or money, is it reaching the right people or not? Yeah. And a program done by like what we have done in MABC does provide that safety net. So there is an assurance to a lot of people that yes, we as a organization will ensure that it is reaching the right people, and therefore provides a much larger opportunity for individuals as well as let's say relatively small organizations to channel their give back to the society. So therefore, I think transparency is absolutely key. And within your organization or within, even if you're helping someone, or even if when you're providing the help, do ask for those transparency, and that would provide trust, and therefore I'm sure this kind of programs will have much better reach and much bigger value back.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Barath. David, over to you, and also to help answer me the last question here. What happens if people don't do CSR? So how do we deal with the root cause, and how do we and what happens if we don't do it?
Yeah, I think CSR is now is the time for everyone to play a role. I just want to put out a quote here by John Wesley. He says, "Do all the good you can by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can." Right? So as long as we can, I think we should do our part, because never before that we have things like white flags and people on the street and begging for food and things like that. So it's a very sad state, right? All this because of COVID. Could we have done better to prevent this? you ask me, I think so. I think we could have done better, right? But what choice do we have? We ended up in an environment that is in a way helpless, especially to many. So I think we can only do whatever we can right now, to play in a small role or big role. And I think this effort will be most appreciated by all. And this is for the future generation to come, that they have a better place to live and a better Malaysia. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Dinesh, in closing, what do you have to say, and how do we start dealing with the root cause, and how do we start to generate a situation that is a desired future?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I just am reminded as David spoke. The founder of Lend-Lease was a man called Dick Dusseldorf, and in 1973, so how many years ago is that? Nearly 50 years ago. He said companies must start justifying their worth to society with greater emphasis placed on environmental and social impact rather than straight economics. That was 50 years ago. And I think that quote is so relevant today that, because as I look at some of the questions when people ask about CSR, I think that companies have to, as David said just now, it is a must do, increasingly becoming a must do rather than a good to do, I think, as good corporate citizens. On the bigger picture, Nordin, and what do we have to do? One thing to me this pandemic has told us is, this is not the last pandemic. Let's hope not, because then the world might end. And we are going to face this situation in the future, maybe in 10 years or 15 years or whatever. And what it tells us is that we have to, there has to be some sort of a safety net for the people in the B40 in particular. It's a much bigger topic, but we are all doing our bit, and that's what MABC Cares is about. And many, many people and companies are doing their bit. But when you talk about what do we do as a solution to this problem in the longer term, I think what we have to address is how do we provide a safety net for people in such times of distress? And that's a very, very big question. We haven't got the answer in Malaysia. Obviously, some countries have it, but it is a very, it is a big call because it's an expensive solution, but it's something that needs to be thought about. I hope that answers that, Nordin.
I think so. It's definitely given us a direction, to take, and a lot to chew on. And I think there's a lot to be done. But I think I wanted to thank all of you gentlemen for joining us. David, Barath, Dinesh, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for joining and answering so many of the questions that we had from the floor, the virtual floor still. And we really encourage everyone to do what they can. If they want to do something, go to the Malaysia Australia Business Council website. We'll make sure the link is put in the comments below. Do what you can, and even if you don't do it together with MABC, fine. Just go and do something, and I think we'll be more than happy. So once again, gentlemen, thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you all again on the next edition of A Working Lunch with Nordin.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Barath.
Thank you. Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you, Nordin. Thank you, Barath.
Thank you.
You guys.